Hey everyone, I'm Adam Brous.
And I'm Scott Maupin.
And we are Solutions from the Multiverse, where we bring you solutions, unheard of, new solutions to the world's problems.
We got a new episode for you today. So what is our solution, Adam?
Scott, there are not enough geniuses.
There's two, you and I aren't enough. We need more.
That's right. We have a shortage. 2 is not enough for 7 billion people.
Not enough geniuses.
That's right. So today's solution is going to be a solution to make more geniuses. Okay. Have you ever heard of blue zones? Blue zones?
Blue zones, no.
Like where people live for a long time? Have you heard of this?
I've heard of Blue Man Group. Did they come out of blue zones?
They were from a blue zone, yeah, where everyone's just blue and hairless.
No, I haven't heard of blue zones. What is a blue zone?
You're deeply behind the curve. It's okay.
I usually am.
So the reason why you're behind the curve is not just because you don't know blue zones, but actually since blue zones came out like a few decades ago, then recently there's been some ideas that maybe blue zones were a scam. Like, anyways, my point is there are these zones in history. So blue zones are where people live like past 100, like people live very long, very long longevity in these areas. Like, Okinawa, Japan. There were these parts of Italy. There were these parts of America, like with Seventh-day Adventists that would live very long. And so this guy wrote this book called the Blue Zone Book, and it's all about these blue zones. Anyways, it turns out maybe those parts of the world were just they were doing Social Security fraud. Like the Okinawans were like, my grandpa's still alive. He's 112. We'll keep collecting that check every month for Social Security. Anyways, so it's maybe the data is a little bit screwed over. But anyways, I'm talking about zones where throughout history there were these places where there were tons of geniuses per capita. And this is like very easy to confirm based on the data. Some of these would be Athens in the 4th and 5th century.
Okay.
You had Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Thucydides, Sophocles, Euripides, Phidias, Hippocrates, all within 100 years, within a city of like 30,000 people, like 30,000.
Sort of the heart of philosophy, right? Like just kind of modern philosophy, everything, all thought
and literature, and drama, and like a bunch of things, right? Hippocrates was medicine, right? Okay, we also have Florence from the 1400s and 1500s. So 15th century, 16th century Florence. You had Leonardo, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Machiavelli, Brunelleschi, Alberti, Galileo.
Doing better than I would.
So amazing, just amazing, just genius upon genius upon genius for only about 60,000 people. So it's just like the per capita genius level was like 1 in 10,000. It's like incredible, right? If you had that today, we have 7 billion people on the planet. In America, we have 330 million people. If there was one Leonardo or Galileo level genius for every 10,000 people, we would be like, we'd be awash in geniuses. It'd be like insane, right?
So what happened? I mean, did we get dumber, or what?
There's something in
did
the
things
water.
Everything get discovered already? I mean, they were doing easy stuff maybe before.
Well, let's talk about one. Let's talk about one more, which is Scott. Let's talk about 2 more. Then there's Scotland in 1740 to 1800.
Braveheart.
This is probably Braveheart. It was all about
Genius.
William Wallace. So this is probably the most dense per capita genius ever. So you have Adam Smith, David Hume, James Watt, like electricity, Joseph Black, James Hutton, Adam Ferguson, James Reed, John Playfair.
This is all from Scotland?
These are all from what was called the Scottish Enlightenment.
Whoa!
Which was just before the European Enlightenment. Like
whenabouts was this? I made a joke over when you were telling me it was actually what time period? What time period was this?
This was 1740 to 1800. So it was like the late 18th century. So that was a country of 1.5 million people, but they literally in like just 50 years produced the foundations of economics, geology, thermodynamics, philosophy of mind, sociology, all simultaneously. So it was like tremendous like density of geniuses.
Yeah.
Vienna, 1880 to 1920. You had Freud, Wittgenstein, Mahler, Klimt, Schoenberg, Ernest Mach, Otto Wagner, just like an incredible, and that was like another couple million people. You had like dozens of major geniuses at once. So you have like 1 in every 50,000, right? So what the hell happened? Where are these geniuses? Like why? I mean, you could argue. So the solution for today is that we should take the education. So all of these places had very similar educational systems that are not in almost in any way like our educational systems. And actually, people today in education would consider their educational systems like bad, but
Oh,
or different. They would be like, people would be suspect of them. I think we can get into it. So, but the solution for today is, what if we took the commonalities of these tiny little pockets of incredibly high per capita genius, and we said we're going to build a school or a school system that was that took the key aspects of these school systems and applied them. People might be sort of suspect or might doubt or say, well, that's unconventional. But what we're drawing from is the historical record across multiple continents and multiple countries over thousands of years where the most geniuses were produced.
okay. I mean, that seems
You're
like solid
okay.
logic. I'm
Yeah.
assuming it involves lots of worksheets, lots of Xeroxed worksheets, and just
Mostly Xerox worksheets.
doing and,
That was what really backed the
and
Scottish
pre-
Enlightenment.
preparing for. They did this by preparing for standardized tests.
That's
Like they
right. And
taught.
overhead projectors with with dry erase
I think
markers.
Socrates was, that was his famous teaching tool, was the overhead projector.
Plato's Academy. Yes. Oh, yes. The famous Platonic overhead projectors. Right. Yes. Yeah. That
I
was
don't love it. All right, it's just we're friends. All right, it's just my projector. You're projecting, actually. You're projecting that onto me.
Stop projecting. Stop projecting onto me. Socrates was all about people today, if you're a millennial, you remember the overhead projector with the whiteboard marker. Did you have that with the transparent worksheets that the
Yep.
teacher
Yep.
lectured while doing that? That was pretty awesome, actually. You could really watch that and like pay attention. I should say that part of this idea is related to the university that I'm starting, which is Elton University, which uses almost all of these. So it's
I
meant
was
to
going
be
to say,
sort of a
I'm
genius
imagining
machine.
you're using the stuff that you've discovered as
Yes,
the
yes.
good
So
stuff
if
to
people want
use.
to come to the Genius Machine University, I can't promise you'll be a genius, but we are basing the instruction exactly on these things. And not because they come from, not because of this idea, but
Right.
because research, evidence-based education shows that this is also the best way to learn. So it's not meant to be just some historical museum piece. It's based on contemporary science, but it's also interesting that it fits with this sort of historical case. So some of the characteristics of these schools, like the way learning worked, was people engaged in serious study before like 18 years old. Like they would enroll in serious study between 14 and 16.
Serious study being what?
Like
Like
they would be like, I'm going to study political philosophy.
like they specialize
I'm
early.
16 years
They
old.
decide
I'm 15 years old. I'm already going to start my kind of career
pick a path.
in political science. So the idea of being like well-rounded is nowhere here. There's no like well-rounded. That's not a thing in these cases.
Is that related at all to people living shorter lifespan? Like if you die at 45, maybe 15 seems like our 30,
Yeah.
maybe it's,
I don't,
or
yeah, I guess
it's still going to
relatively,
feel like
yeah.
15. It's not like you
There's no
physically
evidence of
mature
people
faster.
saying
You
that.
just die sooner.
Yeah, if you die sooner, maybe being a little, it's like dog years or something, right?
I mean, they heap more responsibility on you, but I remember being 15. You're not like mature and ready for all the, wilds of the world at that point, but you're choosing your stuff
I think
early.
our society infantilizes the youth.
Yeah.
And if you look at historically, like a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, I think is 13 years old. And you were considered like an adult in traditional Jewish like ancient Jewish culture. So I think, and if you look at other societies even today, like I had a busser. Well, I was a waiter, and I had a colleague who was like the busser of the restaurant, and he was from El Salvador, and he had a child who was 14, and his child was starting a family and running his family farm. And he was very like proud of his son, who was like a man who was starting a family and running a farm at 14.
Yeah.
So I think people generally throughout history, 14 years old pretty much meant you were an adult.
Yeah.
And so our culture pushes it to 18 for good reason, I think. I think there's good reason to do it the way we do it. But, throughout history, it would have been more like there would have been more responsibility given at 14.
Well, I think you're right that our society definitely infantilizes children, but also I think we're afraid of empowering children.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
it's
Yeah.
a self-serving interest too. It's keeping them down so that we don't have to
Yeah.
answer for the state of the education system or the
Yeah.
state of the environment or the thing, the people who have the most at stake. We're just like, no, 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 you can't talk. This is the room of grown-ups. Also the room of the people who have failed to fix any of the problems and probably increased
Right. We
them.
caused the
So
problems.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we'll
Yeah.
be dead before the people who were telling to
We have to
sit down and
watch
shut
out
up.
here, though, Scott, because, when we did that, when we did an episode where we talked about lowering the voting age to 14
Yeah.
as a solution, and then, you and I think about this as, kind of advocating for and kind of liberating the young. When I talked to people about that, immediately it was actually kind of weird because I was like, why does their minds go there? They were a lot of the people I talked to about that were like, oh, that's like you shouldn't do that because people want to lower the age of consent to 14. So it becomes this like sex thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that wasn't in the like that's not what we're talking about at all.
I think people
Like you can
do
still
when you start
protect
talking about
people,
ages and children being more capable at younger ages, people all start getting side-eyed and go
I know
like,
they get
"Where are
all
you going
about
with this, bro? What
sex.
are you doing?" And you're
I
just
was like,
like,
what's going on in your mind that you go there? Because I'm not
"Yeah."
going there. I'm
Well,
not
and
thinking
the like, is it a wild idea to think of empowering people and still protecting them, and
right.
that
Like, can't
it's
we
not like
protect
you don't
people?
have to open floodgates all or nothing. You
Right,
can
right, exactly.
choose choose
Yeah.
some. You have a
And then
little bit of
and then
discretion.
there are like people, I mean, awful people who do want to like lower the age of consent. And then with that, they don't say, give them the right to vote. So I mean, it's like the risk is
Yeah,
not that they get the right to vote. Actually, if they had the right to vote, they could probably vote for greater protections for them against like, gross, lecherous men
that
who want to like have sex with 14-year-olds.
certainly yes. It would
Yeah.
certainly
So I think it
change
would
the.
empower them more and strengthen their ability to protect themselves because they
I
would be a
agree.
constituency
You'd
that
probably
could
see some.
protect themselves, more
You'd
because
probably
they'd
see
be like,
some.
I can vote for
Yeah,
those,
totally.
protections. But anyways, we just have to be careful with that because I didn't realize because I didn't that's not the way my mind works.
Right.
But a bunch of people I talked to were like, oh, that's just you're just pushing down the age of consent if you do that for sex. I was like, Jesus Christ.
You're
Anyways,
like,
but yeah,
I would
so
like
that's
to
one
teach
characteristic of
children
this
advanced like knowledge
mathematics.
centers and let
Right,
them
right.
have like creative ideas. And they're like, oh, really? So you want to
Oh,
like hook up with
oh, I
kids?
see
You're
where
like,
you're
no.
going. Epstein Island over here.
Yeah.
So, anyways, anyways, unfortunately, that's what people think about. But yeah, so
Yeah.
in these situations, people 14 to 16 were already going really deep into a specific field. The idea of being like well-rounded was not a thing. You didn't there were like people say, well, what about Renaissance man? Like, the Renaissance man, you're talking about the Renaissance. wouldn't
Right.
wouldn't they be like Renaissance man? Yeah, but that wasn't their educational system to force being well-rounded upon them. they just
Yeah.
they just were interested in a lot of things and did a lot of things. Like Leonardo da Vinci just did a lot of things. He was interested in a lot of things, but his focus in school was art, and mechanical
Yeah.
stuff that he would, because art back then was very technical. It wasn't just like this sort of everything. You didn't just buy art supplies from the art store and then go
Yeah.
make. You had to like make all your art supplies, which was very complex and technical.
I hear you saying that it's kind of like your theory is that you could pretty much bring up a genius out of a lot of people that aren't currently, it's not unlocked and not open. It's just the process, like how if you were great at hockey but you started at 20, you're never going to be good enough to get into the NHL. You have to
Oh, maybe
start that
so.
at like
Yeah.
age 5 to get on the right track.
Right,
And
right,
maybe that's the genius. To get that level of genius,
right.
you have to put them in a funnel like this.
Yeah, the fact that we're limiting people so that they have to learn, history, English, math, blah 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 blah, all the way until they're
Yeah.
18 is just it doesn't seem like the right choice to do given these examples. So the other thing that was interesting was that a single professor would teach a student for multiple years, building more of a kind of mentorship relationship than like a sort of transactional, oh, I have first periods with my math teacher, second period for one semester, and then second period is with my English professor for one semester, and then they're gone. And maybe I see them later if I have a course with them later when I'm a senior. And right. And then those
Right.
teachers are just kind of floating around the school and they're in the teacher's lounge and you know who they are and they kind of know who you are, but it's all just classroom interactions and there's no like actual mentorship, right? So this was the exact opposite. This was like, 14, 15-year-old starting and then all the way through, to your early 20s, you would be like, I go work with, Professor, Bob, and he's like a master painter or a master astronomer or a master political philosopher. And he just tells me what to do all day. Like I'm his apprentice, basically. Like he tells me to read stuff, I have to read it. He tells me to write stuff, I have to write it. Like I'm his sort of apprentice. And there's a bunch of other apprentices here, and we all just do whatever he says. We're like his assistants, his TAs, so it's almost like what we today do, only at the most advanced graduate level, was happening, maybe not right from 14. You probably would have had some sort of initial readings and stuffs you had to do, but all of that even would have been monitored by just one person who was like, did you read this and this and this? Like, go read these 10 books, come back, So it's not like transactional one-off classes with one teacher that then you never meet again. That's definitely not the way it was. So this is how Elton is too. Elton is one-on-one instruction where there's like a mentorship that develops between the faculty and the students.
What I like about the idea in modern times is that it feels more available because I was going to ask about in Greece or in 1700 Scotland or, in Venice in Italy, the people that get into that channel, into that funnel, is that like a select few people? And then other people go into the funnel for like shepherding and other people go into the funnel for like blacksmithing and other people go into the like different funnels and then but the tricky part is that now at least we can switch around and you can choose what you want to do. But if you had been like, oh, we're all farmers, you're going to be a farmer at 14 and you never have a chance to become one of the genius or like how many people never got a chance to move outside of their
right
outside of their station.
I mean, I think it cuts both ways, because some people are like, oh, it's all nature, it's not nurture, so like it's all just going to be based on sort of innate IQ. But you have to understand that at this time in history, it's not like they were like going out to the farms and doing IQ tests and pulling the high IQ farmers. It was not like there was no like selection like that. It was like if you were a bourgeoisie merchant or an aristocrat, you would be educated in this way. That was it. Like there was no like selection like that,
the people who were going to get educated. This is how.
Yeah, the people who are getting educated were the people getting educated. So there's no like, so the number of geniuses was not because they were like sourcing all the hinterland high IQ geniuses into this system.
Right.
This was like, no, there was just a set population of people who genetically were probably equivalent to the farmers. I mean, genetically, there's going to be no difference because there's no genetic difference between human beings. So no, you can't explain the number of geniuses from some kind of selection or kind of aggregation of like high IQ natural intelligences. And actually, I think that's like BS. Like I'm an evidence-based educator. I've looked at the data on this question of like natural intelligence and like natural IQ and stuff, and it's mostly garbage. And that's not to say that there aren't differences in natural intelligence. They're slight, and there are. But what's true, what the data shows again and again and again, and is like, I would say is ironclad, is someone who's like an like totally crazy, like natural genius in the 0.99, 99.99% natural genius. If they're not given a good education, they are like an idiot. Like they won't be able to achieve anything in mathematics or chemistry or philosophy, right? But someone who has like a 50% IQ, but then gets a really, really good education will be able to make contributions, meaningful, valuable contributions to whatever fields, medicine, science, whatever. So yeah, it's kind of a paradox that I think people have a hard time getting their mind around. There is such a thing as natural intelligence. It virtually does not matter at all because it gets blown away by the quality of the education that they get. I was hanging around with a bunch of like techie weirdo, like wealthy people in San Francisco a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago. And
All right.
everyone there, I was talking to them, and then I realized that underneath everyone's like what they were saying was this complete allegiance to this idea of like a natural aristocracy who were like cognitively elite and therefore deserved like more money, more power, more status. Like, and I was like,
Weird.
ooh, yuck, 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 yuck. I don't like this at all.
No, yeah, that's
It was
that's weird
nasty.
talk when you're like, oh, the us's and the thems, I guess, is
Exactly. They would
what we're
never
going.
come out and say it. They were too, too well comported, to like ever be as gauche as to come out and be like, yeah, we're just better and smarter, so we deserve more money and more power and influence in our society. They would never say that, but everything they were saying would go back to, well,
Right.
yes, the cognitive elite, oh yes, there's a cognitive difference, which is bullshit. If you look at the actual data that because they're getting stuck in that paradox because they're saying, oh, look, the science says there's natural intelligence. They're right. But what they're not looking at is the science that then shows it doesn't matter. It gets wiped away by the quality of the education. The other difference is the curriculum was explicitly interdisciplinary. So,
Meaning that your one teacher is going to teach you a lot of different subjects, or how does that
yeah,
work?
it just meant like when you went and talked to the teacher and went and kind of were doing your studies, if you were doing like natural philosophy, which was what science was called back then. So you're doing natural philosophy, so you're looking at like flowers, and then somebody else is like looking at, you might be like, oh, well, how does like musical harmonics tie into like flowers? I'm going to like play music to the flowers. Like I'm going to do the mathematics of music. I'm going to like apply that to flowers and like look at it. And your teacher would be like, great, cool. Like the teacher wouldn't be like, no, that's music. It's not biology. It's not plants. Stop. There was just this like total openness to like pulling in mathematics, pulling in science, natural philosophy, pulling in ethical, other philosophy into whatever you are doing. That's the exact opposite of certainly our universities, but also even our secondary primary schools. Like, well, this is history class, so we're going to talk about history, and then oh, that's biology class. We're talking about biology, and the idea
Should
that
be
you could just sort
linking.
of be in this milieu where you can pull in anything and start learning about anything that's related is not allowed.
Now, is this similar to something like a Montessori school or one of those like self-directed schools where they let kids kind of just explore the room and do whatever? Or
That's right. So yes. So actually Elton is becoming and really is from the beginning, but we're trying to really live up to being the first Montessori university.
nice.
So the Elton University. Yeah. So no, yeah, a more self-directed sort of schooling would be more like this. And Montessori is like that to some extent. I mean, different schools, they all just say they're Montessori. It's a really authentic Montessori school will be more the student led. But the problem is not very many schools are like that, even ones that list themselves as Montessori. And very few Montessori schools go after fifth grade. So that's only 10 years old, right? So
Right.
as soon as they get into a high school, there's a few Montessori high schools. There's
Then you
no
have
Montessori
to.
universities except for Elton. Elton's the first in the history, as far as I can tell, is the history of the world. I just met with the American Montessori Society, two leaders of the American Montessori Society. They confirmed, they were like, yeah, there's never been a Montessori university. And they were curious about what we were doing and they wanted to kind of provide guidance, which is what I approached them for. And so, yeah, we're kind of trying to live up to that idea.
Well, it feels like it switches in junior high and high school or middle school and high school because of universities, because
Right.
they start teaching to get people into what the current university system is. So we can't really upend it from that grassroots side because they're like, no, 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 our job is to get kids into higher education, prepare them for universities. And this is what universities are like. So I
Right.
think you're right. Restructuring what the university is the way to then affect high school, junior high school,
Oh, I
middle
see.
school.
Because it would create like a downward pressure to like a channel into Elton
Right.
would be like the high school student trying to get into Elton would be like, I'm gonna try to have a different high school experience to fit in with this more student
Right. If
centered.
you're trying to get a Montessori high school to someone who's like, wait, though, I need to have my GPA look like a certain way and I have to have my extracurriculars look a certain way so that I can apply to these schools the way that they, filter and select students. I don't have a lot of variation in that. I have a very specific menu I have to fulfill. But if more and more schools, like you're saying, are switching up how they do universities or how they want students to kind of come in prepared, that triggers high
Right.
schools and opens up those channels to be
Right.
like, hey, this is my goal school. This is how I would prepare for it.
Right.
These
Because
are how
otherwise,
we
they're all
prepare
just
students for
preparing
that.
for the standard schools. They're all just preparing for
Everyone's trying to get
semesters,
the SAT, ACT.
lectures. Yeah. So if you're saying we want to make geniuses, we got to start at the university in order to unlock them, and maybe like genius high schools that could start afterwards.
Well, I mean, I was going to say there was a movie about this a while back called Baby Geniuses, where they tried to create babies. I thought maybe you were starting to propose a new baby geniuses, and that turned out kind of like Jurassic Park, but with babies. It was not. It turns out not to be good
Did
to
they eat the
mess
lawyer?
with genetics. So I think the university level is correct. That's
Okay,
where it
don't
feels.
start with babies. Got it.
Don't start with the genius baby.
I noticed that the baby geniuses are all wearing diapers, which means they're geniuses, but they shit their pants.
They're not
I don't
that
know.
smart.
I don't know how big of geniuses they are.
Hey,
if
you
they
know
still
what?
poop their pants.
Maybe that's the height of intelligence. If you can make someone else deal with your waste, then you're like, look who. Oh, really? I'm not that smart. Who's
Oh,
dealing
really?
with all the?
Last
Who's
time I
doing all the work
checked, I
here?
had like grown-up slaves just
I'm
like,
just laying here going cuckoo, and you're doing
yeah, they
everything
have to
else.
do everything. Yeah.
You calling me not a genius? All right, maybe.
I'll tell you another difference here. One thing is the professors were paid by student fees. So they weren't paid by like a university system, like through the tuition to the university and then divvied up to the professors. The students came and said like, I want to work with you. I'll pay you to be your student. So that
Would
means
that
the
be
teacher had to like serve the students' interests. It wasn't like, well, you failed my class, and the students like, I don't like this professor. They're not very good. Well, it doesn't matter. They're your professor. You know, you have to do whatever they say. It wasn't like that. The students could just leave. They could be like, no,
Yeah.
this is crap. They just
Well, I
leave.
was wondering how much, like how much of a chunk are we talking about? Are they paying for a month at a time or a week, or is it just going like, teacher, if you want today's coin, you better, you
Yeah,
better give me
right.
something.
Dance,
I better
monkey
learn something today,
dance.
or you're not getting this shiny drachma that I have in my hand.
That's
Sorry.
right. I was probably, it was probably like, weekly, month. It was probably like monthly,
Yeah.
Yeah. They had to like
Small
pay
pouch
their
of
fee, or if maybe it was seasonally, like,
values.
oh, this spring I'll, and then winter, fall. I mean, imagine they didn't have really strict calendaring, right? So probably
Yeah.
did sort of seasonal sort of work. There was also a culture of clubs and societies. And so the students would be working with their professors like one on one, and they'd be with their other kind of apprentices who were all kind of around that teacher, which already kind of formed a natural club. But then
Okay.
they would like, there was a bunch of these different clubs, like these different students following these different teachers. And then in that space, there were these like social clubs where students would come in and just like hang out. And then they'd all be like disputing with each other and talking with each other. So there was this like cross pollination happening.
This is the Greece that you're talking
All
about?
of them. Every one of these
Yeah, I was gonna
geniuses.
say,
What all these characteristics are the characteristics of all these zones of genius.
'cause I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds like the
Or
French
genius
salon
schools.
or whatever that's happening
Yeah.
during the
Which
Renaissance.
did we talk about France? Oh no, we did Florence, Scotland, Vienna, Athens. But yeah, there's France in the 1800s.
Well, it's
also
just
could have
the
argued.
Renaissance
Or
kind of
Paris.
stretched across a lot of
Yeah.
Europe chunks.
Yes, exactly. So those salons though were usually like not necessarily students, right? They were often like there were students there, but they were also just
Oh,
kind
they
of
were
like independent sort of researchers and
ideas
aristocrats
people.
and stuff. I'm talking about like specifically like places that had like schools, like Plato's Academy, Aristotle's Lyceum, Scotland, the University of Glasgow in
Would they go and like
1800 or in a
debate
1500.
the other people's ideas like they're a dojo going into another one to fight
So,
them? Or
so
would they
that's
go and
the
be like,
next
teach
that
me what's up?
that's the next
Was it
characteristic.
aggressive or
So the next
Percent.
characteristic is that students were required to publicly dispute, like argue with each other, like debate, essentially. So debate was the name of the game. They did have to do writing. They had to write, essays, and they had to write things, and they had to read a lot. But really, they had to argue orally, like they had to dispute one another, and with their teacher too. The teacher would say like, take some position, and the student would have to dispute with the position. Like
Right,
just like
right.
the way you
Very
have a
effective.
conversation about something.
Play devil's advocate or just kind of support
Right.
their ideas?
And maybe the teacher would push you like that's not going to work because of this, and he says that, and then you'd have to on the spot be like, here's the response, right? And that disputation, that live oral disputation with other students, with your teachers, with like older students, younger students, right? Like across different levels of preparation was a key factor. And in our educational system is absent, completely absent. I mean, almost entirely gone. You write papers, you do readings, you take tests, you have a discussion in class, and a teacher might sort of, kind of, well, what about this? Or what about that? And students just, I mean, maybe you have some activist sort of student who will actually engage with you with that, but most students find that very distasteful. They like don't like to do that. They don't like to be like put on the spot. Oh, you put them on the spot. That's like a criticism that teachers get from students. Oh, you put them on the spot. That's bad. Yeah. Well, all these Jones of genius, all these like genius times in history and places, the students were constantly putting themselves on the spot or getting put on the spot by teachers, by other students in kind of instructional environments or in these sort of social clubs. They were constantly doing disputation.
Well, I think now teachers probably are even hesitant to create to try and encourage passionate, like intense arguments with their students, or that they're kind of like, no, we're supposed to shy away from creating these sort of moments and these sorts of strife, which can,
hurt feelings.
Err on the side of exactly. We don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to get in trouble. I'd rather just keep my head down and make it to my next class or next day. Or
mean, I'm like I don't think speech should be like intolerant. I don't think that should be allowed. But disputations, I think is cool. I think it's important for people to civilly discourse and debate on the merits of an idea. I think at Elton, this is still not a very strong part of the education, but I want to strengthen it. I want to make it, once we have more students, it'll be easier to be like, oh, the students are going to hang out and have a student seminar or like a student hang, But right now, I think most of the sort of disputation just happens because you're doing one-on-one instruction, and the instructor does like not necessarily disputation, but more like an oral examination. Like, tell me the 3 reasons why this is like, why do you believe this? Why do you believe that this is the case? And they tell you, and then you say, but what about, wouldn't an educated person like disagree with you? Like, not I'm disagreeing with you, but wouldn't someone disagree with you and say this, and this? And then they have to respond in some way. So you're doing a disputation, but it's not like an actual debate. It's not like I believe this, you believe this, we're fighting. It's like, what would an educated response be,
Yeah, and you're checking to make sure that it's a well-constructed argument, or you're going around and tapping on all the pieces and knocking on the posts and being like, all right, this stands up. You got it. Or if it doesn't, if they don't know what they're talking about, it falls over, and you're like, that's where you need more support.
Yeah, they would have had they didn't have textbooks, but they did have what would be called like primers. They had these like little books, like manuals that would help them do technical things like math or whatever. But they would have also been reading a lot of original texts, or in addition to like primers. So that's another thing that our schools don't do. They do almost all textbooks, very few original texts. Maybe in literature class you get some original texts, but like in history, you're not reading like the actual original history books. You're reading like a history textbook.
Summary.
And the same thing in science class. You're not reading the actual original science papers and books. You're reading like a textbook that summarizes them. So, I think, if you wanted to make a school like this, you would pull back from textbooks, or you'd make new textbooks that were like all original sources. And it was more like a compilation of papers with, extracts of major important extracts of books and stuff like that.
But
that's another difference. Yeah.
Do you think that's a thing that's just happening more and more often in the world, where like you Google something and now you see an AI overview where it's the summarized excerpt piece, and it's like they're trying more and more levels to keep you away from the original sources, or from reading like the extended stuff.
Yeah, I guess it just gets worse and worse. But if we can recognize that these schools were creating, a high density of geniuses, and that's cool, that's a desirable social outcome, but also it's just a desirable outcome. Like, parents want their kids to be geniuses. Students want to be geniuses. Like, students are like, I want to be really good at math. I want to be really amazing at, I want to make contributions to medicine, to science, etc.
And be ready to identify opportunities that don't even exist yet. So you can't even
Absolutely.
prepare for them because they exist as time goes on, and then you have to be,
Yeah.
seize them as they come out.
I will say, so if we're talking about disputation, I will say people could fire back at this and say, we do have geniuses. They're just not recognized as geniuses because it's just so cognitively difficult to like do a bunch of things in our society. Like being a just like a marketing person at a normal company requires you to like do really sophisticated creative work. They're not recognized as a genius, but like they are actually a genius, in the sense that they invent whole new, I don't know, marketing campaigns every week, and that's actually pretty remarkable. So you could argue that like, oh, there are the same number of geniuses. It's just the historical contrast, the fact that people were first to do things puts them in the history books. I completely disagree with this. If you look at the quality of thought and work of like a Da Vinci, it is leagues ahead of anyone I've ever met. I mean, so far more amazing and precise and deep. Like his theories of why he was doing the things he was doing. He wasn't just the first person to do them. He was also like one of the best people to ever do some of the things he did. Like he's arguably still one of the best painters ever. He wasn't just the first painter to use perspective, which he was arguably one of the first painters to use perspective to make a three-dimensional image. But he's also like one of the best painters ever. So it's not like he was just the first, but he was bad. Generally, it's like no, he was the first and was amazing at everything.
Still doing things that people are trying to figure out.
Right. Like if you try to make a copy of a Da Vinci, you can't do it. He's too good. He spent too many years and was focused so much on it.
So then if we're making more geniuses, are you worried? I mean, I grew up reading comic books. I know about Lex Luthor and Brainiac and, Dr. Octopus, Dr. Doom. Are you worried about creating evil geniuses is what I'm asking.
I mean,
theoretically, if you're creating more geniuses than by just pure numbers, we should also be creating some evil geniuses in that. And how are we going to deal with this?
I guess Machiavelli, people sometimes think he's evil. Galileo was trying to hit people with cannons. That was how he figured out parabolas.
Was he?
That's how he figured out parabolas. He was like,
they don't talk about that part of. Yeah, they don't talk about him as a cannon man.
He was a cannon man. That's where he figured it all out. Yeah, he figured it all out.
Stars and sky guy.
And he wanted to build war machines, like big towers that could wheel over and you could climb up the walls, and catapults that would like throw the stones far. And
Galileo?
Yeah, Galileo was like a siege engine city.
He was like a bloodthirsty
engineer.
Warlord. He's
an engineer. He worked for the warlords. He worked for the princes.
He's like, with my advancements in science, we can crush everyone.
Evil genius sounds, right?
We will grind our opponents' bones.
Even Leonardo da Vinci, when he applied, Galileo, the evil bad guy Galileo. When Leonardo da Vinci applied for his position with the Medici, I think it was with the Medici family, he said the whole letter was like, I can build siege engines. And it was all about all the different like siege engines and like ways he can like build weapons. And then the last sentence famously was, I can also paint. And we remember him as like a painter, but actually like at the time, his ability to do engineering was the thing that he was really selling himself on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he was also advanced in medical. He was a freak. He would go out and get all his dead bodies and be like, just give me some of these dead bodies. I got to learn with them. And there people are like, all right, Leonardo, go for it. Comes out later and he's like, I learned so much from these dead bodies.
Are you making claims? Are you making insinuations?
I've learned these dead bodies as much as I can. Can I have some more, please? I need some more learning.
The reason he did the dead bodies in anatomy was because of art. They weren't actually thinking about it medically so much as they wanted to draw people better. They wanted to know where the muscles were so that when they drew, they could like indicate those muscles. Yes. And then that made the paintings look more realistic.
He was frustrated with the lack of detail of like anatomy and physiology stuff.
Yeah, he wanted to draw like someone's arm, and he needed to know all the muscles in the different parts of the arm so that he could make the bulges in the right places. So that
He's like, what, you want me to peel the skin off the arm of a living person, you weirdo? No,
You
of course I
weirdo.
need.
Get a dead
I'm
person.
gonna do it with a dead body. I should have
Duh.
called him Leonardo da Vinci
How
because of
about
how much he liked learning.
Leonardo da Vinci? That's
Oh
probably what
no, I bet that's what his bully said.
that's what his
They would
bullies
take,
called him.
they would take, they'd be
Leonardo.
like, that money you're gonna pay your teacher, you're gonna give it to me now.
Give me your teacher money,
Leonardo.
nerdo. Leonardo.
And
There
then,
probably were
oh,
bullies
maybe
back
that's where he got
then.
his dead bodies. He would take them from his
Kill the
bullies. Who called
bullies.
him anyone who called him Leonardo was next on the list. He's like,
You
I
called
want
me
to see what the
Leonardo
inside of
one
your
more
leg
time.
looks like. We'll be back here. Gonna Dexter you. Wow, this has really turned away. We've turned we've turned a corner here. I don't know what kind of
I like
subconscious.
Leonardo at quad dexter. I like that. Dextering people. But yes, we should like be really we shouldn't be so certain about our educational systems. Like they were developed in the last, 50, 70 years. Most of them are based on German, Prussian, German, northeastern German educational
Yeah,
systems.
yeah,
Arguably, in the 20th century, there were a lot of German geniuses, mostly Jewish people who then fled the Nazis.
mm,
But there were also non-Jewish German who were, had sort of genius level outputs of
yeah,
philosophy and science and medicine and chemistry and metallurgy and stuff. And that came out of the German university system, which a lot of our system is based on. But I think, I think we should be we should broaden our gaze a little bit, go back in time a little bit and say, like subjects, in school with subjects with like classrooms with these sort of bells ringing and like people going from period to period through a schedule like maybe some schools should be like that, but we should be much more, I think, open to other schools being more like these schools of the past where so many geniuses were generated.
yeah. Imagine if you like one subject in your school day and you get to spend 1 hour active and engaged in learning, and then you spend the next 6 hours hating your time and wishing you were anywhere else except learning history or math or whatever it is that
Right.
you're not
The other
feeling.
subjects, right.
Imagine instead you've got a school day where you get all 7 hours, 8 hours doing stuff that you want to do and are engaged in. You get to be locked in the whole time. That is, even if you're like, yeah, but we're not forcing them to learn geography by making them suffer through it at a very slow adoption rate. I'm like, yeah, maybe that's
Maybe
okay.
that's okay. Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that's fine. And you can let
And
them
I will
just,
say you do see some natural like it's interesting when you say let's list out some of our contemporary geniuses. You often find out that their upbringings were their parents were like crazy and took them out of a traditional school and just like either homeschooled them or gave them like other educational systems that looks more like this. Like
yeah.
Bill Gates didn't go to conventional schooling. His father just taught him about computers at home all the time. As that was his
And once
education.
he latched into his area of interest and expertise, he just kind of
Right.
like
And then
let his
right.
interest guide his
Right. And Steve
education.
Jobs famously like just was a complete like alternative, just learning what he was interested in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson, his dad took all his kids out of school, no traditional schooling. They just danced and sang all day long. And, you would say, well, that's child abuse or something. But you know what? You get Michael Jackson. Like you get Michael Jackson from it.
True. Although I think Michael Jackson's dad did actual like classical child abuse stuff too.
Well,
I
I'm
haven't seen the
sure.
movie.
Yeah. So this would be better
But
because
like,
it'd be an actual school. So the students would be protected in this sort of school environment.
yes,
But
not
then it
the
would be structured to provide, and also, you get one Michael Jackson, maybe you get 100 not great outcomes. These schools could kind of fix it so that everyone was succeeding to a certain level and then open up for
Mhm.
people who are going to kind of pop up higher,
Yeah.
could have that kind of headroom, right?
Well, and excellent, sort of like you're the average of the five friends you're surrounded with, or kind of like those kind of groups. They kind of accelerate each other. The thought a think tank or something where each person pushes each other, and then they're better as a group with that discussion than they would just be solo trying to learn it on their own.
Yeah.
Each person pushes the others.
And I shouldn't call this zone of genius because that's something else. But I just want to call these like per capita genius hot zones or so I don't know what to call it, but there were these hot spots,
Brain zones.
these, yeah, brain zones. Or I don't want to use the word zone,
Sounds
but
rude.
anyways, there's these sort of hot spot, genius hot spots throughout
Yeah.
history. And the school we could design, which really is Elton already, actually, but then I think, and then maybe high schools could kind of, or Elton, it'd be great for Elton to start a high school. I'd love to do that. But, right now I got to focus on Elton specifically. But, to have these kind of hotspot, genius hotspot schools, I think it would be really cool. And it doesn't even have to just be like academic, like Michael Jackson, like dancing and singing. That's great. Like it could be the arts, it could be, but it should be interdisciplinary. Like if you're, just like Leonardo da Vinci was, he was apprenticed to an artist. So it was sculpture and painting and drawing, but
Right.
they had to do anatomy to do better at the art. And they had to do math and, they had to do engineering to like build their canvases and build their sculptures and move their sculptures from place to place safely. Like they had to engineer whole systems to do that. So they had to learn a ton of engineering. They had to learn a ton of math. They had to learn a ton of chemistry to make the oil paints and make the mediums that they used and stuff. So, you could learn dance and music, but then you have to learn, what's the interdisciplinary parts of that make you better. Like poetry, you have to learn poetry to write good lyrics, and to write good poetry, you have to kind of know the history of poetry. Well, you need to know literature then, and you need to know history too.
Yeah,
'Cause
you're
you
gonna need to
know
read some classics and
where that
stuff.
literature took place, and and
And if
multiple
you do
cultures.
music,
You should
you
know
should
different
probably
cultures.
have math. Like music is tied to math in science in different ways and harmonics.
Yeah. And you're also just like a citizen of a country too. So you're going to be curious
Yeah.
about like how other things work. But that well-roundedness, I feel like the difference is people today are like, we need to make sacrifices to get people to be well-rounded. And it's like, no, you should just focus on what people are interested in. And guess what? They will end up well-rounded if you do that. And the students who aren't well-rounded, that's fine. You can have some students just be crazy narrow experts. And some students will be jacks of all trades. They'll be like they won't have a good depth. That's fine too, because society can survive with a diversity of
Yeah.
people's levels of expertise, across those
Fact,
dimensions,
feel like it
breadth
thrives
and
on that.
depth,
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt society for like
No.
1% of people to be total jacks of all trades and another 1% to be total, one Johnny one notes. It doesn't hurt society. It actually helps society.
Yeah.
To make everybody forced into like the middle of that bell curve is not, I don't think that does help society really.
No, and there's a lot of collateral damage along the way of just kind
Right,
of
right.
forcing everyone through the same shape of the cookie cutter,
That's right.
It,
That's right. The
we
factory
I think we
model.
lose more than we gain.
Right. It's also interesting that all these periods of history that we're talking about were before industrial revolution. So before a factory was even a concept in human history, they did education not using a factory model. They did it using an artisanal model with apprenticeships and, you know, interdisciplinary. Like a guitar maker has to make the body of the guitar and the head of the guitar and the thing and the strings and like they have to make the
Right.
whole guitar. Whereas today, a factory would make all the guitar, and one person might make one part of the guitar, and then it would be this factory sort of
And you
model.
just make it,
Yeah.
hyper.
So being interdisciplinary was inherently. So yeah, I'm not saying be like a Luddite or something. I think you can use technology to enhance all these things, but let's use the recipes that it seems like history suggests, and also evidence-based education suggests, would lead to people learning a lot, not because they have some natural intelligence. Again, I completely disbelieve the importance of that ultimately in
Right.
people's outcomes. It's only because people respond to these environments so much better than they respond to these highly mechanized, kind of mechanical and sort of discombobulated educational institutions, which is what we have today, where you have this class for this semester and then this teacher that you see, but then you don't see them again ever again. And you don't really get time to actually build any kind of relationships with people. And, you know, I don't know if disputation actually matters. That's one, I think that's probably the weakest link here, that you would need to do like disputation. I actually don't think you need to do that. There's no evidence that I know of that it matters if you do disputation like that.
But having like a lock to a person that you can always kind of an anchor you can go back to over a longer period of time than just like, all right, I really enjoyed working with you and learning from you for 9 months, a little bit at a time, and now it's over. having that is huge, and being able to kind of like
Yeah.
kind of weave all your disciplines together and learn as kind of like a whole unit at the same time is
Yeah.
also seems really useful, especially to some people who don't find that the normal ways of learning have lit them up in the way that they would like, or that they feel like they get locked in that way.
Yeah, I think also what a sad thing is a lot of people, maybe like kind of right wing people, they really, really like hanker for this like kind of back to that like disputation, like, oh, I want to have like arguments and have take positions
Right.
that maybe aren't popular and defend them, and so they're like kind of acting like that's the most important part of this. But actually, I think as an evidence-based educator, I would say that that's probably the research, the contemporary research would suggest that that's actually the weakest link of this whole system. That's
The,
not
when
defended.
you say the disputation, you mean like the teacher pushing back on your ideas, or
Not
the
well,
other
like the teacher
students
and the students, disputing with
fly,
each other, debating
sparring
with
with
each
each
other.
other?
I actually don't think that's, because the research suggests that it's important to get feedback. It's important for people to give you feedback about your thoughts. Like, so if you're
Yeah.
like saying, I'm a big Marxist, it's important for someone to be like, here, like, you need to look at the arguments against Marxism, but it doesn't have to be like some big emotional disputation that's oral and real time that makes emotions sort of flare. And it doesn't need to be any of that.
Right.
They could just read an article about the arguments against Marx. That's fine. So I think disputation is probably the weakest part, but the strongest parts are the interdisciplinary, the one-on-one instruction, moving at the student's pace, starting younger, like treating people more seriously as serious scholars earlier. All of that I think and letting people focus if they want, being student-centered. The data like the science completely backs that up. And it's really a Montessori approach. That's the Montessori style. So yeah, I'm excited. I think Elton's kind of got this tiger by the tail, and we're accepting students for various programs. And
How would people get in touch with Elton University?
go to elton.university. Yeah, elton.university. So the website is elton.university.
Okay.
Yeah, they can go check it out. And our most popular program is a PhD program. So it's like a PhD program where you work one-on-one with professors, and you have an advisor and professors that help you, and you do original research. That's your research. And there's no coursework, because there's no need to do coursework. You just work on your research, and that's how you learn. You learn from doing the real thing, rather than sort of, oh, you have to go do this other stuff in order to someday do the thing. It's like, no, just
Right.
go do the dang thing. So it's an exciting move. It's a lot
Very
like
cool.
what people do when they're not in school, right? I think that's the interesting thing too. Like, if you're not in school, what do? Well, you learn about stuff. You learn about cooking. Like, there's a lot of people into cooking. How do they learn about cooking? They expose themselves to all kinds of different cooking. They try to make things in their kitchens. Like, they don't
You get
necessarily have
into
like a
something, you
teacher.
start diving deep on it, you
Yeah,
follow
they
your
dive
interest,
deep, right? They do a deep
you
dive into
you see
something
what you're good
cool.
at, what you like about it,
Right,
you
right.
chase that more, maximize that. Yeah,
And people would probably get a lot better if they had like a chef that they could talk to once a month and like
for
get
sure.
feedback from. They'd probably grow a lot faster, right? So, so it's really not that crazy. It's just saying, hey, let's structure our formal education actually the way most informal education is structured, but get the benefits of both, right? Get rid of the weaknesses of both and get the benefits of both.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I like it. I think
There it
that's
is. Do we come up with a name for it? Genius hotspot schools.
like what do they call it? Earthquake spot, the epicenter of an earthquake.
Epicenter. Ooh.
We need a genius just so that we can get the right name for this. We need the perfect branding mind to
I don't have it.
rescue
I
us
don't
here.
have it. I'll admit it.
Back to baby geniuses. We'll have to go
Baby
ask
geniuses.
we have
That's
to
what we'll
create
do.
more
Yeah,
baby
there you go.
geniuses.
Okay, this is great. Well, thanks everybody for listening and tuning in. And more solutions to come. I promise they won't all just be education solutions, but I've got Elton on the brain, so maybe that's why I'm thinking about that.
Hey, we'll take them as they come. I love talking through them and hearing what's in your mind each time. So thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Well, all right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.